Okay, so let me go ahead and just rename that properly. So as I had mentioned, we are going to talk about um, the difference between the settlement statements. So let me pull up this section right here. You should have it under Notion. So we have just in general, we have the estimated settlement statement, and we have the final settlement statement, right? So the estimated, which is going to be the ESS, is going to be from the beginning of the file when we request escrow documents or when we open escrow up until our closing date. So throughout the entire process of the loan, we're always going to have ESS. After the loan funds and it closes, and we request that settlement statement from escrow, that's when it becomes our FSS, our final settlement statement. So this FSS is only going to be once the loan closes. Every other time, the settlement statement is going to be labeled as ESS. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now going through the difference between a purchase versus a refinance. A purchase, we're going to have our master and our buyer, as well as the final, we're always going to have our master and our buyer. When it's a refinance, the borrowers already own the property, so there's no master settlement statement. It's just going to be one set of settlement statement, which is the buyer or borrower settlement statement. So that's why that one, when it's a refinance, it's only labeled ESS or FSS once the loan funds. Okay. So I kind of just want to explain that before I actually show you, but I'm going to show you different settlement statements so you can see the difference between them. So this buyer's and master settlement statement, as you can see, they look very much the same document. It's going to have the titles or escrows company information. So this buyer one that says here buyers, sometimes is also known as a borrower. This one, it only has their set of fees. This is all the fees that our buyer or borrower is going to be paying. Versus this one that's a master settlement statement. It has a section for the seller and a section for the buyer.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So when you see it, if you see two separate sections, that's a seller and buyer, then that's going to be your master, whether it's the ESS or the FSS. So if we look at the FSS, if you look at this FSS, it has a buyers here that only has one section for the buyer, and this master FSS has a seller and the buyers. So the difference between master and buyer, master has both seller and buyer only has our buyer fees.
And the difference between master and FSS if it's already funded, and then master if it's still in process, correct?
No, so the master itself is always going to be whether it's these two. So the difference between the FSS and the ESS, in this case, these two right here, this one is already funded, but the title in itself is going to be final. So this anything that says closing statement, settlement statement, or a combined settlement statement, that's going to be your master. So this here is going to shows final. Also, most final settlement statements are going to have some type of certification from our escrow versus this master one. It has the title estimated. If I were to look at a different assess, so this one right here, this one specifically says master estimated. Not all of them says master. It would just say estimated settlement statement, but because there's a seller here and a buyer here, we are going to assume that this is a master ESS. Okay. So same thing with the buyers. It's going to have the final versus this one has an estimated. So ESS stands for estimated settlement statement versus FSS stands for final settlement statement. So again, when the title for your document says final, it's going to be your FSS. If it has both sections of the seller and master, it's going to be, or seller and buyer, it's going to be your master. All you would have to check is that this, either it says estimated or final.
Okay.
Now going back to, so this case, this property was a refinance that we were working on. If you see this one says borrower's estimated settlement statement versus the other one that says buyer. Usually for purchases, it'll say buyer. It can also say borrower, but on a refinance, for the most part, it will say borrower. Okay. Same thing with this one for our ESS. Again, for refinance, we're not going to indicate any master or buyer at the beginning of it. We're just going to label it as ESS or FSS, depending what it says, whether it's an estimated or a final. That's what we're going to label it as. And then it's just going to be on all of them after you put master ESS or just ESS or buyer FSS, whatever the case may be. After that, you're going to put the underscore, property address underscore, the statement date for the master. So the master is going to be the date it was prepared, not the master, the ESS, the date it was prepared. On the FSS, we're going to put the disbursement date. So this disbursement date is the day it got funded. That's the date that we're going to put on the FSS. Versus the ESS, we're always going to put the date that it was prepared. Okay. Any questions? No? So if we get a document that says the estimated closing statement and it only has one section of fees, what would you name it?
If it's a purchase, it's buyer ESS, and if it's
Okay.
a refinance, it's ESS.
Got it. Okay. If it's funded and we get the settlement statement.
It's FSS.
Okay.